On Triggernometry, which is a podcast with Konstantin Kisin and his co-host. Pardon me for not exactly remembering the co-host name. I just slipped my mind. They ask Dave Smith, who is a Jewish anti-Zionist, as he likes to coin himself. He's constantly criticizing Israel all over social media. They challenge him with a hard question. If your daughter was raped by Hamas, what would you do? What would you do if you were in the predicament of the Israelis on October 7th? How would you respond? How would you handle it? Let's have a look at this one, because this is going to be interesting. Of course, ladies and gents, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave your comments, like the video, follow me at Rafi the Realtor for all of your South Florida real estate needs. And you can support the channel by going to the description or pinned comment via the Buy Me a Coffee link. Let's get to it.
But the point about October 7th, and which is why this is important, is ultimately you and I can agree, and Francis, I'm sure, does too, the war in Iraq was a mistake. Lots of mistakes have been made on foreign policy. The question is, what do you do when you are in the situation when October 7th has happened, right? And this is we've had people who have different perspectives on this conflict, as you know. Bassem Youssef was one of them. And I asked him what I think is a very legitimate question, is like, what should Israel have done? Forget about the occupation, let's accept all
of that has happened already.
All of that has already happened. Let's accept it. And I don't want to argue about it. I don't want to go into history because everyone's got their own arguments and blah, 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 blah. But it's happened. What should Israel have done? And we were just on Rogan's show, and I think Rogan agrees way more with you than he does with us about this. But he was like, yeah, if this happened to America, we'd be as bad, if not worse.
I don't know. I don't know. We could get into that, but let me just say, I'll say this first, and then I will very directly answer your question. But first, I will say, I don't think it's like, I get what Bassem was saying to you about that too. Like, I understand the argument of being like I could say the example I made at that Charlie Kirk event, with the now infamous Charlie Kirk event. But the comments that I made was like, hey, look, if you're pro-life, it's not like incumbent on you to have a plan for the baby's education or daycare or something like that. Like, you could just say, I'm against this option because I find this morally unacceptable. And then you figure it out for the rest. So like, my point is like, you can't just oppose what Israel did to Gaza and not have to come up with a solution. But I think it's also a fair question to ask. Well, I think it's fine to say this is morally over the line.
No, not really, because ultimately they have to do something.
Okay, well, fine. But no, I also, saying that, I also think it's an interesting question and kind of a thought experiment. So I can go to October 8th. I can't change anything that's happened before that. I have to inherit that world. And then what would we do after October 8th? Well, look, I do think, first and foremost, I think Netanyahu should have resigned in disgrace. So back to the
Netanyahu's resigned in disgrace. Dave Smith is Prime Minister of Israel.
Well, look, I would say that I think there are, again, like, even with like what you're talking about with Rogan, and where I think people will go like, well, imagine Mexico attacked America in this way. Like, what would we do to Mexico? But I also do think that like there's a really fundamental difference between Gazans attacking Israel and Mexico attacking America, because Mexico, although obviously there's a huge power discrepancy between our two governments, they are a government with a military and some degree of sovereignty, and it's much more like a Native American reservation,
let's do that.
A Native American reservation where we never gave the Native American citizenship, and it's not a Native American reservation the way American Native American reservations are, where they can come and go as freely as they please, and it's just not, we never gave the Native American citizenship. We still hold them on these reservations. We've had a blockade around this reservation and an occupation.
But the Native Americans have moved on. The Native Americans aren't asking for a state. That's a huge difference. The Native Americans aren't trying to destroy the United States. They've accepted the reality. Also, the Native Americans used to slaughter each other like the Arabs do. So, also, the Jews in this story are the true Native Americans here.
Going back 60 years. No, in that scenario, I would not find it justified for the American military to start carpet bombing the reservation. No, in fact, I think you would have a responsibility to make this a police action. Like, you have to arrest these people. And before Netanyahu, there was a terrorism problem since the creation of the state of Israel, partially the Zionists and partially the Arabs. But throughout the entire history of Israel, it was only Netanyahu who ever treated the terrorism problem as like a problem for the regular old military. It was always targeted assassinations, special operations. Again, Gaza is the most surveilled area in the world. They can wait these guys out. They can touch them. They can target them. Now, again, it might put IDF soldiers at more risk than sometimes. That's a thing that all modern armies accept. that we will increase the risk to our own guys to fight wars in more moral ways than we have in the past.
The issue is that the police action thing is really what this is all about, right? Because if you see this as a war, I mean, historically speaking, no country at war is required to provide aid to enemy civilians. That has never happened. But what I'm trying to find out from you is, you say police action, and that's, we had this debate, but not face-to-face, where we exchanged videos on this, right? And we talked about Native American reservation, and you say police action. You've got 50,000 jihadi terrorists. Jihadi as in willing to die for the cause. Is that fair? You shake your head.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't think any of us really know for sure. But yeah, I think the Israeli government was claiming something like that.
Are you disputing the numbers or the jihadism?
I just don't know. I don't know what the number of jihadists who are willing to die. I just don't know.
It's the number you're unsure about.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not the jihadi part. It's
no, there are jihadists, obviously.
They are prepared to die.
Yes,
okay,
there are.
So you've got, can we say, just so that we do agree, like 40 to 50 or 30
I just, maybe sure.
Let's say
for
40
the sake of argument, sure.
40 to 50,000 people in a highly geographically concentrated area, tiny area, right? Tiny area, 50,000 people with pretty sophisticated weaponry, actually. IEDs everywhere, booby traps everywhere, anti-tank missiles, sniper rifles. This is a militarized terrorist organization. Do you really think you can deal with that in a police action?
Well, I think you can certainly deal with it with targeted assassinations, special operations, the way Israel's dealt with their terrorism problem for their entire existence.
But how do you police 50,000 armed jihadis? How do you deal with that as a police action? Imagine you had the Native Americans. They were pretty badass boys when you guys first came here. Imagine you had 50,000 of them in Manhattan, right? And they just went on a slaughtering and raping and rampage, right? And then you're going, let's send in the cops. I don't know that there's anyone who thinks that's realistic.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know.
Tell me how that's realistic.
Well,
I'm open to it.
Well, I'm just saying that, well, look, as I just said, Israel has a long history of targeted assassinations and special
But it's different. Because October 7th is a different level of threat to anything that's ever happened before.
You kept these people occupied for over 60 years. You never gave them citizenship.
We already baked all of that in.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just making the point that whether you think it's logistically difficult to do or not, the truth is that they just destroyed the entire strip.
I don't think it's
and Hamas hasn't been eradicated anyway.
But that's I agree with. But what I'm saying is it's not logistically difficult. I just think it's wishful thinking to imagine that a threat. So here's how I see it. And you tell me where you think I'm wrong.
Sure.
October 7th happens. If you're the Prime Minister of Israel, you shit yourself. You go, fuck, we're being invaded. Our people are being slaughtered. You might also be worried about the blowback on you. You were in charge. I hear all the things that I think you might say. And then you go, we can't live with this. That's what any president or prime minister of a country that had been invaded in that way would say. We cannot have this on our doorstep. I don't care about history. I don't care who's right, who's wrong. We can't have this, right? The people who did this, the people who funded this, the people who orchestrated this, the people who participated in this, they need to hand themselves in for justice or we're going to kill them all. That's what America would do, right? I think that's a fair claim.
I don't know. I don't know about that. But I mean, look, I mean...
So then they go in and they are trying to eliminate Hamas. They're not trying to go in with special forces and take out Sinwar. They're not trying to take out this guy or the commander of this. They're trying to destroy Hamas. That's what they're trying to do. Now, if you think that's not the right reaction, I understand. I think most people would say, if this has happened to your country, America, Britain, that's what the overwhelming majority of people would demand of their government. If the Native Americans had done this, that would be the nature of the response.
Before we continue, I want to quickly share a really important message. Now that a ceasefire is in place, some people might think that Israel's pain is over. But anyone who's been following what's really happening knows it is not. The toll that this war has taken on Israel's economy, on families, on ordinary people just trying to get by is enormous. That's where Leket Israel, the
I don't believe it's credible to say that can be addressed on a policing basis. That's a large-scale military operation, and there's no other way to do it.
What can be accomplished? Destroying Hamas.
Degrading Hamas to the point where he just can't come back.
There is something where you go like, look, okay, I'm sure Israel could look at October 7th and say, we find this to be intolerable, and we are entitled to a violent response, and if some innocent people get killed in that violent response, well, I'm sorry, but this just happened to us, and we have a right to do that. You could get there from the Palestinian perspective, too.
It's different.
And although, there are differences. But
the differences are what matters here.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm not sure they are, but go ahead.
Here's the difference. The difference with, say, you mentioned, for example, the Soviet Union occupying Eastern Europe. When Eastern Europe wanted to break away from the Soviet Union, they didn't invade Moscow and rape women. They didn't take hostages. The difference is that armed resistance, look, man, we're men. If people came to our place and started putting us in chains, we'd rise up, we'd pick up a rifle, we'd engage in armed resistance. But when you deliberately target civilians, it's not the same. It's not the same as dropping bombs on terrorist houses who deliberately put their families in those houses. It's not the same. And that's the difference.
Yeah, there certainly is a difference between like the primitive nature of Hamas's attack and the barbaric nature of Hamas's attack, but at the same time, the end result of it is innocent people being slaughtered.
I know it is.
And that is, so, and if you...
But there is a difference between Nazi Germany attacking Poland and the Western allies responding. Would you agree? There is a difference.
There's a difference.
They both result in people being killed, but there is a difference because it's about the conduct and who initiates that particular phase of it, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, but I think that...
So
I mean,
this is the
mean,
difference with October the 7th. This is why it's a different category of violence, in my opinion, because you've got a situation where a band of terrorists deliberately invade another place and they don't attack. I mean, sure, they attack some IDF facilities.
They killed a bunch of IDF people.
They attack some IDF facilities, but really it's about taking Israelis hostage, raping them, killing women, killing children, dragging them off to the dungeons and holding them there for power. That's not the same as what the IDF is doing. Would you accept that?
No, I don't really think that's right. I mean, again, I think there's, if it makes sense, but I do think that, like, if you're talking about this conflict and you're going to put yourself in their perspective, the end result is that they're going through that at a much larger scale than the Israelis ever
have. Of course, but that's what happens when you start a war with a much bigger force, right?
It's very debatable who started what here. Well, everyone claims they're reacting to the other one.
I know, but October 7th is a sui generis thing. It's a one-of-a-kind thing, right? But October 7th is a sui generis thing. It's a one-of-a-kind thing, right? And the reason this really matters is, you know, I think you paint a very important picture. I don't think enough people, particularly on the pro-Israel side, get the scale of the suffering in Gaza, right? But if I were that father, I would be going, why are we here? How has this happened? And what I'd be saying is, why did you have to go and do October 7th? Why did you make me put a weapon cache in my house? Why is Hamas doing this to me? We were living in relative peace. The Israelis had left. I'm not saying it was great. I'm not saying it was the greatest place to live in the world, right? But we were living in relative peace. The Israelis had left. I could go and work across the border, blah, 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 blah. And now I've got IDF bombs on my head because you went and raped people. The scale of the suffering is something not enough people, as I say on the pro-Israel side, do give due credence to. But I also think that a lot of people who are anti-Israel, they use the scale of the suffering to confuse the issue of who bears ultimate responsibility for that suffering. And that is really the area of disagreement, right? Because we can all agree that what's happening... Look, man, I'm a father. When I see what's happening in Gaza, it makes me sick. Yeah. And it should make everyone sick. But the reason we disagree is that I believe the people who are responsible for that are the people who did October the 7th. And I'm on the record of saying this. If Hamas had attacked IDF installations, I was totally undecided about Israel and Gaza until this war broke out. We had Melanie Phillips on the show in like 2019, and I was like, oh, Melanie, you tell this great story about the creation of the State of Israel. I think it's a little murky. I was undecided, right? When October the 7th happened, I was like, the people who are responsible for what comes after this is the people who did this. Because any leader of any country would react in something like this way, or probably worse. Yeah, I mean, I guess I just think that the same exact logic could be applied in the reverse. And to say, listen, 60 years of brutal occupation, man, whatever comes after this, you're responsible for that. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. But that isn't true, though. Well, it's as true as what you said. No, it's not, because I'm not saying... See, take another example, Russia-Ukraine, right? Like, I have Ukrainian family, I have Russian family too, and it's a tragic conflict. They're engaged in a brutal war, and it's a much more parity war, therefore it's much more brutal, actually, right? There's way more people, men on both sides being killed. If Ukrainians, who I support, went on a rampage in western parts of Russia and started raping women and taking children hostage, I would be like, there is no fucking way this is justified. There is no oppression, killing, butcher, murdering in Ukraine that Russian soldiers have done that justifies this. This is an outrage. This is completely unacceptable. It's a different type of thing to the conflict you've been engaging in. And if you do this and the Russians then go ham, you cause this, is how I'd feel about it, right? Yeah, and that's the difference.
Yeah, I guess I just don't... So certainly what I would agree with is that, right, like no matter what, and I think this almost just comes down to like individualism versus collectivism. Like you don't have a right to just kill innocent people, no matter how much you've been suffering. Like it doesn't matter, even if the Israeli government...
what happened.
Well, I'm saying that say like in the example of Hamas or in the example you just used with Ukraine, it doesn't matter how brutal the Israeli government's been to you. You still can't just go kill teenagers at a festival. Like it's not just a justified response. So I completely agree with you on that. But then also, as I said before, cutting off aid to the civilian population who's war torn after 2 years.
How much aid is Russia providing to Ukraine?
Wait, hold on. Let me just finish my point here. Cutting off that aid is also not a legitimate response to like Hamas slow rolling the dead remains of civilians.
Okay, But it's like, this is what I'm saying to you. Russia's not providing any aid to you.
Yeah, but also doesn't have a blockade around Ukraine.
As much as it can, it does. They deliberately.
Well, Ukraine has been there's been no shortage of aid that's been getting
because
into
we're
Ukraine.
trying to help. But the Russians have done everything possible to cut off rail tracks and the supplies and everything. They're bombing logistical infrastructure in rural
I
Western
100%
Ukraine.
think that if Russia's
not providing any aid, and no
agree.
one's saying,
And
why aren't they providing aid?
Yeah,
Because
but
they're
also
two
nobody's
countries.
defending what Russia's doing. Nobody here is saying like, well, okay, maybe not nobody.
Have you been to Austin?
Okay, fair enough.
Wow, Dave is just getting bodied on every point. Every point brings up the aid point, bam. Brings up the comparison between Israel, Palestine, Mexico, bam. Native Americans, just Konstantin's just steamrolling him. So I don't have much to say on this. Konstantin and his co-host just absolutely smashed Dave in this debate. I just they were able to play devil's advocate and put a mirror up in front of Dave's arguments in every single scenario. And he just really didn't have good counter arguments. I would love to debate him at some point. So if any of you watching this happen to have some sort of a way to connect us, that would be greatly appreciated. Anyhow, definitely make sure to leave your comments. I would love to get your feedback on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Like the video. Make sure to follow me at Rafi the Realtor for all of your South Florida real estate needs. You can support this channel via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description or pinned comment. And I hope you will tune in to the next video. Until next time, peace out.